Hi, this is Jacob Sapochnik with the Enchanting Lawyer podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our show. Today, I'm honored actually to have Ted Rubin on our show. Ted is a social marketing strategist. He's one of the most followed people on Twitter. He's a keynote speaker, an author. He wrote Return on Relationship, a very, very interesting and one of the best-selling books on Amazon. And Ted is actually a mentor to many marketers and other professionals online, and I'm very honored to have Ted here today. Welcome to our show, Ted.
Well, thanks, Jacob. I'm excited to be here.
Very good. And Ted, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is because I feel that there's a lot of content out there that is always the same. People always preach the same thing, how to be social, how to do this, how to do that. And I think you have a lot of interesting things to say about this. Your approach is very different. In fact, I wanted to share how we met. We actually met by coincidence at a conference where you were waiting for your taxi to the airport. I was waiting for my car, and we just kind of exchanged conversation. And you, not even knowing me that much, and you being who you are in your field, you just kind of gave me your card and said, "Sure, reach out to me," which I feel is very surprising because many people are not like that, unfortunately. So I'm very happy that you did that, and wanted to welcome you to the show. Why don't you share with our listeners about you a bit, your background?
Well, just real quick before we talk about me, I want to just address something you just mentioned about exchanging cards, about telling people that you're open to communicating with them. One of my problems, and I think maybe we'll get into this as we get into the conversation, the issues I have is that we're being given all these tools to be more social and to be better friends, but instead we're becoming less social and not as good friends. I can't tell you how many people say, "Oh, I don't have cards anymore, just look me up on LinkedIn." And I'm like, that means I have to remember your name, I have to know how to spell it. And imagine hearing that at a conference where I've met 300 people. If every one of those 300 people said, "Sure, look me up on LinkedIn," instead of giving me the tools to make it easy for me to do that. So let's back it up a second. I'm happy to answer your question. My name's Ted Rubin. TedRubin.com is my blog. My Twitter is @TedRubin. Google Ted Rubin, and the first few pages will be about me, other than the 97-year-old Medal of Award winner from World War II. That's not me. And I certainly hope if you saw it, you wouldn't think it was. But I got introduced into the digital world back in 1997 when I joined Seth Godin at his startup called Yo-Yo-Dine. Now, I'm 56 years old. I'm not a kid. I've been around a lot of different things. I was in the sales field and investment fields. I'd like to say I think that the best marketers were former salesmen because we learn how to listen. Good salesmen learn how to listen. They learn how to hear what's important to the people they're dealing with, and they learn to be problem solvers. So I think that's really important, and probably the most important part about my background. I got involved in this new up-and-coming space. Again, I joined digital when it was called new media. Probably a lot of your listeners know that term, but it wasn't new media at all. It was old media in a new package. I think we're really entering the era of new media now. It's the age of influence, where anybody can build a brand, affect change, make a difference, right from their own bedroom. I mean, for God's sake, you don't have to leave your home. I'm not saying you shouldn't, and I think you need to get out and meet people, but you don't have to. It's what keeps me awake at night, Jacob. 24/7, I can be building relationships and adding value to my life, to my work, to everything I do. And it keeps me all the time online. And when I see people that aren't taking advantage of connecting with people in a way that actually builds relationships, it truly makes me sad. I mean, I'm a dad. I have 2 teenage daughters. I want them to understand, not just point at a screen and say, "Hey, Dad, I have 500 friends. Look at this on Facebook." And then the first 10 people I ask who they are, they shrug their shoulders and say, "I don't know." And, that isn't scary to me as a dad because I worry about my kids and fear for them because I don't. I think they're really smart. I give them the tools to think for themselves. It worries me because people like you, people in your audience, senior executives in companies think that clicking a button means making a friend. And all that click of a button is the initial handshake. If you and I had simply shook hands, got into our respective cars or cabs, and parted ways and never communicated again, we couldn't call each other friend.
Right.
So,
and I think, Ted, the word friend, and you have an interesting post about this. You talk about taking the word friend back, and when I read this, I thought this is just what it is. This is what we should be doing. People think that if we have 1,000 friends on our page, if we have 100,000 likes on our page, then these are people our friends. They're not our friends. And why don't you explain about what do you mean by taking the word friend back?
Well, you know what I mean is taking it back from Facebook, and I don't mean taking it back permanently or not allowing them to wrap their arms around it. And I don't mean they did a bad thing, but Facebook's done an incredible thing for them as a brand. They have taken ownership of the word friend. I mean, imagine that. Close your eyes. Think of the word friend, and invariably, instead of a picture of your friend in your head, you see a Facebook logo.
Right.
I mean, and they've devalued the word because they've led a lot of us to believe, and again, they're not preaching this, it's just because of the tools they provide, that simply clicking a button means a friend, that simply liking somebody's post, that maybe saying hello to them on their birthday is all it takes. And I just think that we really have to take that word back and give it value again by going beyond just the initial handshake, by reaching out to people, by connecting with them. And I don't mean every single person that you're connected with every single day, but at different times. I tell people, serendipitously, go into your following, reach out to people, just like you might have in the old days when you had a telephone book. And you'd sit at home and say, who should I call this weekend? And you'd page through it and go, oh my God, I haven't spoken to Jacob in a long time. I should give him a call. I think that we need to take back that word. I think we need to start taking advantage of these platforms where, I mean, think about it. Just a few years ago, how many people could you really be in touch with in a regular month? I mean, let's think even pre-email, because I consider email social. I consider it a social platform or texting. But think when there was just the telephone, which we thought was a remarkable instrument. But when I was growing up, there wasn't anything called a conference call either.
Right.
I mean, you're probably not old enough to remember the dial phones. I mean, it took 5 minutes just to make a phone call. You know, now we can be touching hundreds of people a day. And we can be saying hello to them, asking them a question, actually answering their questions, not just saying hello and then walking away. But if they respond to you, ask them a question, talk to them, just touch with them. I mean, I also tell people to pick up the phone, call people. I like to hold my iPhone up. So I hold my iPhone up when I'm at conferences and to the audience, and I ask them to tell me what this is. And people kind of shrug their shoulders, and then finally someone screams out, it's an iPhone. And I go, well, what's the biggest word in iPhone? And invariably, everybody says I go, no, it's phone. It's not about you. It's about other people. And this phone is really cool. We all have apps on our phone. This one comes with a preloaded app that these numbers appear on the screen. And if you press 7 to 10 of them, you can actually hear somebody's voice. You can laugh, you can cry, you can scream. You don't have to use emoticons to express emotion. I mean, and I challenge people to pick up the phone once a day and call someone they haven't even spoke to. I mean, think about it. Even attorneys don't use the phones anymore, for God's sake.
Right.
I mean, unless, of course, it's something that they don't want on paper.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know, but everything is email, everything is text. I mean, and which, by the way, I don't have a problem with. It makes life easier. It makes it quicker. It allows you to touch more people. But just, we have to start thinking about how do we make that person a friend? How did we do it before? How do we do it with that person that we do want to get to know us? We say hello. Here's a really important thing. Start calling people by name. Okay, so, you know, you mentioned at the beginning of a call you were going to ask me about a book, but I'm going to throw it in now. So people a lot of times ask me what are great books to read, and I tell them, I'm going to give you a secret, and it's a pretty well-kept secret. There's a lot of people that own this book, but not a lot of people think of it as a social media book. It's the best social media book ever written. And the clue I'll give you was written in 1936, and it's called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Yeah. And when you read that book, you learn how to engage with people, how to make them feel good about themselves. Dale talks about always call people by name. The most beautiful word in any language to any person is the sound of their own name. But nobody does that. Now, if you follow me on Twitter, @TedRubin, and watch the way I communicate with people, I always call people by name. I mean, periodically I might forget or miss one, but 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100, when I reply to you, I say, Jacob, have a great day. Thanks for sharing that. What's going on today, Jacob? People feel then that you're not just cutting and pasting or giving them a standard answer.
Right. And that's why emails that use that process where they actually put your first name in the beginning of the email, kind of you feel more connected with the person who writes it.
Exactly, but imagine when it isn't something that's automatic. I mean, a lot of people write to me and they go, oh, what app are you using to reply to everybody with their name? I'm like, it's called my fingers and the human brain.
Right,
It's
right.
not it's not an app. And you know, sometimes
Yeah,
it takes a lot of extra effort. Sometimes people's Twitter handles don't have their name, and I have to go to their bio to see the name, or I have to
right,
even further and click on a link in their bio to
right.
get to somewhere. But I go to that effort because they know that you did. Mention the town they live in. If they live in
Mm-hmm.
Park City, I say something like, "Wow, I love to ski." Or if they live in San Diego, I say, "Wow,
Right,
best climate in the world. Aren't you lucky?" And then people know that you're paying attention.
right. And I think you said that people will never forget how you made them feel.
Right.
And this is something that if you mention something that is unique to them. I mean, in your case, I mean, people know that you like colorful socks.
Yes.
So and I notice that you every time somebody gifts you socks or mentions it, you like to highlight them because you feel that they actually took the time to learn that about you,
Exactly.
and you will always remember that. And I think
I mean,
that
I even go to the extra effort. If I'm posting a pair of socks that somebody gave me and I already thanked them for,
hmm
instead of mentioning them, let's say in the post because it takes extra time, I'll tag them in the post so that they know that I was wearing their
right.
socks.
Would-
You know, it's just showing people that you're considerate of them, that you care about them, that you're
Right.
thinking about them, and more importantly, that the effort they took to connect with you was worth it. I want people to know that when they go out of their way to connect with me, it could be as simple as saying good morning to me. I
Right.
want them to know that's of value to me.
And I think for my audience who are professionals working in this hectic environment, when even take this offline when somebody comes for a consultation, and they sit down there and they start telling you about their problem, instead of going through the problem, just say, you know what, I like your shirt, or if there's a kid with them, just mention, get it off topic. They'll remember that. So, you know what, this guy made me feel comfortable. Maybe I should go back and see him again.
You know, there's a couple of things. First of all, there's a great scene in a movie called The American President, which
hmm
stars Michael Douglas. And he's a widowed president, and he's going on like his first date. And his daughter, who's a teenager, looks at him and says, "Dad, tell her you like her shoes." Girls
Right.
like to hear that. You know, it's a little thing about, like you said, making a comment.
Remember that.
Or let's take it back to when you were first trained. And I'll guarantee you learned this, whether it was something that you learned in school from a mentor,
Right.
from your father. They said, when you go to the office to meet with somebody, look around their office, look at the diplomas on the wall, look at the photos on the table. Are they a father? Are they a grandfather? Do they
hmm
like to ski? Do they like to surf? Do they like to sail? And then when
Right.
you can make comments about things, what it does is it adds to connection. And I got to tell you, there's not an attorney out there, or at least not a good attorney out there that I know, that won't tell you that it's all about relationships, that
Right.
he's built his practice on relationships. Sure, in the end, if you don't execute, you can have all the relationships in the world. But no matter how good you are at executing, if you don't have relationships,
Right.
if you don't nurse those and make them valuable, then you're not going to have a practice to go home to.
Exactly.
The
A-
problem is a lot of them haven't taken the leap to how social media can help them do that.
And this is it. The number one question that people always ask me is when I tell them, listen, I use social media and this has helped me build my practice and it changed everything for me. And the number one question is, what is the ROI in
Yeah,
social media? Tell
right.
me the ROI, the number one question. And so, I mean, I have some of my answers for this, but I'm curious to know what you tell people. I'm sure you get asked that question all the
Well,
time.
when I get asked that answer, especially I mean that question, especially if I got asked by an attorney, I would look them straight in the eye and say, "What's the ROI of trust, and what's the ROI of loyalty?"
hmm
And
Excellent.
he will look at me and he'll go, "Well, you just answered my question with a question." I'll say, "No, think about it. Okay? If you get the trust of your clients, your friends, your family, if you get the loyalty of your
hmm
clients, then instead of having to constantly be building a business and keep it at the same level, you're going to be growing your practice to be bigger and bigger. If your clients come back, then you get new clients and your business just gets bigger instead of just maintaining its size." So that's one answer I give them.
hmm
Another answer I give them is that, like I like to say, it's about just let's make sure we make this distinction. I'm not saying it's return on relationship versus ROI. I'm saying return on relationship enhances
hmm
ROI. So return on relationship will build your ROI because no matter what you do, if there are relationships about it, if you publish an article in the Law Journal, okay, and it goes and stands on its own, it has so much value.
hmm
If you have 1,000 people on Facebook that follow you regularly, or Google Plus, or Instagram, or Twitter, and you put it out there, more people are going to see it than just those people who are going to see it on via the Law Journal. If
Right.
you have a strong relationship with them, they're not only going to read it themselves, they're going to share it with their audience and friends, which just took your reach and increased it exponentially. So, you sit me down with any professional, any amount of time, and I can make him understand the value. What I can't show him, at least normally, is the direct line from that post to revenue.
Right.
Because social media is not a direct marketing platform. Look, I'm sure your audience is a little bit different, but let's look at some of the, let's say, lower level attorneys out there, or some of the guys that are beginning, and maybe they put an ad out somewhere, or
Right.
they have a Yellow Pages ad, or they put something in a direct mail piece. Call
Right.
Jacob, he can help you with, whatever, and sure, when you see that, you're going to get back exactly how many people that got delivered to, number one. Then you're going to find out how many people called you, because your receptionist is going to be trained to say,
Right.
how did you find out about us? So you're now going to be able to go back and say, okay, well, I spent X amount of dollars and look how many calls I got. But that's not what, so first of all, that ad disappeared 5 minutes after the person opened it. It was either used or it went in the garbage. Okay, social media lives on, your content lives on, your brand lives on, your ability to show your smarts, to use a blog, to talk
Right.
about, whether it be immigration law or it be litigating, or it be, real estate or anything. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about law. It can be
Sure.
about fine homes in the area, or it can be about how you can change your life by changing countries, or how companies can bring in amazing employees from overseas. It doesn't have to be the specifics of the immigration law. And all you're doing when you're doing that is you're building your brand, and then beyond that, you're building your reputation. So I like to
Right.
say, a brand is what you do. A
Mm-hmm.
reputation is what people remember and share.
Right. And I think in my case, using Facebook, using the tools of social, allows you to maintain that trust with your people, and they keep coming back over and over again. You don't feel that you're advertising to anybody. You're building a community of friends in a way, who when they need you, they know that, listen, this is the attorney I'm going to send you to every single day.
And they learn, like me, that if I want to get your attention, Jacob, I write you an email on Facebook,
Right.
not somewhere else. But
Exactly.
but that's
Exactly.
an important thing. You see, look,
Right.
I unfortunately, let's say for this call, I was using the tools that were best for me, which is regular email, because that's where I
Right.
keep track. But when
Right.
you're dealing with your consumer, you have to find out, just like your kids,
Right.
where are they most comfortable communicating. So I'm a divorced dad. I had to fight to keep my daughters in my life, and now I don't see them that often because they're teenagers. I'm
Right.
divorced. So I've learned that they don't want to talk on the phone. And for a while, I was that typical dad. Well, I'm calling you and I want to hear your voice.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I learned very quickly that they were going to respond to me if I sent a text to them. And I
Mm-hmm.
also learned that if I sent a text and then didn't get annoyed if they didn't answer me, I also got more responses.
Right.
And the other thing, a great point you made, is that if you build a social presence, you give the ability for people to see into your head, to communicate with
Mm-hmm.
you about things not just about work. To
Yes.
know as a lawyer, to know they're not going to get billed.
Mm-hmm.
When they email or write you, they can ask you a question
Yeah.
on your Facebook page. And what you're doing also is, they don't necessarily have to directly communicate with you. They can do what I call participate vicariously.
Right.
Are you still there? I just lost. Hold on one second.
Yeah. I'm
Oh, there
here.
you are.
Yeah.
They can participate vicariously
Mm-hmm.
by watching your communicating and engaging with other people that follow you.
Correct.
And that's another way that they build a relationship, because they may never answer a question, but when they see person after person asking Jacob questions and
Right.
Jacob answering in somewhat of a timely manner,
Mm-hmm.
that builds your brand in their mind. That says, wow, look at this guy. Like, this is the kind of guy I want to work with.
Right.
He's really responsive.
And it's a window of vision into somebody's life that they cannot get on any website that you put there only what you want. But in actual everyday interaction, they can say, this guy, he's never swearing, he's always kind, he's always whatever they want to see that you do on a daily basis, they can see it there, as opposed to you putting on your website the awards and you're the best lawyer in San Diego or whatever you're from.
Exactly, and they're getting to know you a little bit, and they're feeling comfortable with you, and they're
Right.
seeing, like you said, who you really are. Like, look, I'm a big proponent of sharing my personal life with my business. I don't think there is a line anymore. I think people that believe there is are delusional. But beyond that, I do want people to know who I am as a person. I want them to know that my daughters come first. I mean, perfect example was I was in the city the other night. I was involved in something at a local hotel.
Right.
My daughter was actually listening to me a few days earlier when I mentioned to her I'd be in the city, which of course, that was another wonderful discovery for me, because I thought she was totally ignoring me. She had a problem in the city. She got
Yeah.
stuck in Penn Station, and she reached out to me
Yeah.
and called and said, Dad, I'm stuck in Penn Station. I'm like, honey, do you want me to come over? She goes, yes, please. And number one is I had this opportunity to be the hero and run over and be there for her. But more importantly, the people I work with, they didn't even second guess it. They looked at me and they said, oh, like one of them was already looking at somebody else going, that's Ted's daughter. He's out of here.
Right.
Like, and I didn't have to explain myself
Right.
because they understand that. They know it. And I'm that way with my friends and I'm that way with family. And I've expressed that and I show that by sharing those kind of things. And I just think that's important. And look, it doesn't have to be that way. You can certainly keep things private. You can have a Facebook page
Right.
and you don't have to share your personal life. But what you can do is share your professional life. And that's important.
Yeah, whatever you're willing to share that is not commercial and it gives a glimpse into what you are as a person is important. It doesn't have to be
And
everything.
that's
Yeah.
right. And it allows
Yeah.
you to be commercial because you're weaving it all together.
Right.
So as long as that commercial isn't everything, there's nothing wrong with sharing some commercial things in there or some special things that have to do with business or the fact that you're speaking somewhere or that you're offering a free seminar or whatever it happens to be.
Correct. And Ted, you mentioned the word brand several times during our discussion. What are some of the tips you can share with somebody who wants to build their brand on social? Kind of starting out or trying to elevate that?
Well, again, this isn't necessarily directed at attorneys because that's a different space. But if you're looking to build your personal brand, the advice I give everybody who's a little bit uncomfortable with social media or doesn't necessarily know how to use it is start with Instagram. It's just a very easy place to build your brand because click, 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 click. You're creating content. You don't have to
Right.
write blog posts. You don't have to worry about, is it 140 characters? That it fit right? Am I using the right terminology? And anything you put on Instagram, in my humble opinion, works everywhere. And Instagram gives you the ability to syndicate
Right.
from their platform. So you can be taking pictures, posting it to Instagram, and simultaneously posting it to Twitter, to Facebook, to Tumblr, to Foursquare, and
Right.
being able to do a lot with content that works there. And then, of course, you can write things, but you don't have to. So for me, that's just a great, easy place to start that makes it easy to create content that you can use on multiple platforms. That's number one. Number two is I think Twitter is very important. I mean, I just do. It's one of my favorite platforms. I call it a seeding medium, SEEDING. I believe that a lot of content on Twitter gets picked up and put out on other places. So when you post things to Twitter, you'll find that it finds its way to Facebook, it finds its way to Tumblr, to people's blog posts, because it's a very easy, quick way to get content. Like, I got to tell you, the smartest people in the world are going to Twitter every early morning for their news, for things that are breaking, because, something that's in a newspaper was written the night before. Twitter, it's happening that morning, and there are ways to use it that make it very easy to find that material and not just get lost in a lot of the nonsense or the junk that's being put out there. But what I say on Twitter is fill out your bio. I like to use a quote in my bio because I think it gives people the opportunity to interpret something for themselves. So the quote I use, which is near and dear to my heart, is life is not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. I've had a lot of challenges in my life, and I've learned that you can't wait for everything to be perfect. And even my friends who have the best lives, are the most successful, all of them have had challenges. We've all had challenges. And if you wait for everything to be perfect, it's just not going to happen. So I get so much play from people mentioning that quote in my bio. And then I advise people to use the real estate on their Twitter page to customize it. To get somebody who knows how to use Photoshop to put a bigger photo of you, to put links to your blog, to your Facebook page, to your LinkedIn, because people go there to find out a little bit about something about who you are, even if they don't use Twitter for their tweeting, even if they're using TweetDeck or Hootsuite or one of the apps, they tend to go there to see who you are. So I think that's an important part of it. And then, of course, I mean, especially in the legal field or any of the professional fields, LinkedIn is so incredibly important. And LinkedIn is giving us so many more tools now to publish, to give a better idea of who you are beyond your jobs and your schooling. And I think that it's really important not to overlook that.
Right. Now, the reason I ask you about the brand issue, and specifically also in the professional field, is because I feel that there's just too many people who do the same thing. There's just too many lawyers, too many doctors. The brand, in my case, the way I define it is, and the way we've done it for in my case is, I separated myself from the rest. So we are the social lawyers. We focus on startups. Whatever we do, we're always in the media. We're always there. That creates this guy is everywhere, and the brand is, this is his brand. So I think it can apply to any business. It can be a service. It can be
Absolutely.
Right.
I think that goes towards what we were talking about earlier about
Yeah.
content, about providing value, about writing about things.
Right.
Look, I totally agree with you. Look, I've done it. My personal brand, it has a few parts to it. So one
Yeah.
of it is that I'm a divorced dad, and that's very, very important to me. I fought to keep my daughters in my life. Um, there was a landmark decision about it. I advise a lot of people how to do that. It's changed my outlook on everything. The
Right.
way I view work, the way I view marketing. I talk about things I've done to engage my daughters and how I take that thinking to marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Then another one is that I'm responsive. So everybody knows that if you reach out to me, I'll reach back.
Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, there's return on relationship. And there's
Right.
something called just be nice. I mean, I tweet about that all the time. Just be nice. You know, smile at people, be friendly to people,
Right.
be known. So, like, the point you made is really important, and I'm glad you brought it up. Find something that you can make that's
Mm-hmm.
special about you.
Right.
You know, and also listen to the people who are your friends, who are in your audience. See what they think is special about you, because it's most often what they think, not what you think.
Right.
And listen to them.
And I think, this is very important what you said, because it's not enough to, like, in your case, you're known as the responsive guy, but it's not just you're actually doing it. And another person like you is Peter Shankman. Peter Shankman was on the show a few weeks ago,
Oh, Peter's
and
a good friend.
I know you're doing something together, I think. And he's known to be the nice guy. He advocates the nice. You have to be nice in business, in relationship, kind of like what we advocate in the Enchanting Lawyer. But when I met him at a conference, he was the keynote, and I reached out. I told him what I do, and he said, "You know what? I like what you do. Send me an email." And I thought it was just like, send me an email, whatever. But it wasn't. I sent him an email. He responded himself, and next thing you know, he was on my show. And he actually he does what he says he's going to do, which is again, it's rare in that business. But if you do it, people will mention it, and that's why you both.
If you walk the walk, if you
Right.
do what you preach, absolutely. You know, I think I should be interviewing you on this show, Jacob. I think we should be turning this around. I should be asking you the questions, and you should be answering
We'll
them.
do another show.
Okay.
On your side, but what? Again, I was one of once I started following you, and it was one of these blogs that you wrote about conversation is the ultimate content.
Right.
And I think that this is kind of when I read this, I'm like, this is exactly what we're doing, because you have this big page on Facebook, you have this following on Twitter, people that say, oh, you have all these people, but nothing happens. There's no engagement. If there's no conversation, there's nothing. And so, you said that, but what do you mean by that, first of all, and how do we use that?
Well, my point, and you're 100% right, but a big part of my point was getting brands to understand that it isn't always about amazing content or great stories, that the conversations themselves are the stories. They're the content. You know, I see this happening. Brands push out content, especially on Twitter, and they never respond to people. I mean, they don't respond to anybody, even people that get on there and ask them questions. And I'm like, that's the best content. First of all, that should be shared on your website. Some brands do that. They put the Twitter feed, but some of them are afraid of it because they know they're not doing anything, or they know that nobody's conversing with anybody. But to me, that conversation is such valuable content. And unfortunately, it's being overlooked. It's not thought of as content. It's thought of as the byproduct of content.
Right.
To me, it's the best part of content.
Well, and another issue is, and I think it works well in any market. People are afraid of negative conversations.
Yes.
And so people ask people, well, why aren't you on Google Plus? Why don't you have reviews open on your Facebook page? Well, I don't want negative things to be said. People are creeps. And the whole point is, of course, people are going to say bad things about you. Nobody has 5-star reviews. If you have, they're not real. But the fact that some people are saying things about you, you need to know, and you need to be able to respond. So I don't know, what's your take on that? Conversation can be bad or good.
I take it a step further. I agree with you 100%. First of all, if you're not listening, if you're not giving them the opportunity to tell you what you think, then you're wiping out all that incredible research. I mean, it's there every minute of every day. You know how people keep a pad by their bed for when they have thoughts? Well, my head's like a Twitter feed, and I dream prolifically, and things go through my head all night. I don't keep a pen and pad by my bed anymore. And I keep my iPhone, but not so I can write notes. I go to Twitter and I tweet out what I'm thinking, because by the time I wake up, I've got feedback. People are telling me what they think. When I first came up with Return on Relationship, I tweeted it because I said, oh, this is kind of a cool idea. I mentioned it to somebody. At the time, I only had 1,000 Twitter followers, and within an hour, I had 20 retweets, and I knew I was onto something. So back to what you were saying, I think that critics are incredibly important. Every brand I've ever been at,
Mm-hmm.
Open Sky, Collective Bias, Elf Cosmetics, I would seek out critics on my Facebook page. I would welcome critics.
Right.
Because first of all, when you turn around a critic, 9 times out of 10, they become what I call a dynamic advocate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually not very difficult to turn around most critics. Now, I want to differentiate something. I'm not talking about haters. Haters
Yeah.
hate. Critics give you valuable feedback. Critics can be turned around. Critics, 9 out of 10 times, have a very minor issue
Yeah.
that you can address, and then they become advocates of your brand.
Mm-hmm.
Haters, I basically ignore. I mean, there's no reason to answer a comment that says you suck.
Right.
It doesn't require an answer. Or if somebody's writing hateful messages, like I am not an advocate for taking things down off a page, but if somebody's writing something inappropriate and hateful, I'm all for taking that down. If they're
Right.
criticizing, don't ever take that down. Respond to it. Reply to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, JetBlue has a great saying. They like to say that if one person's complaining, the odds are there's at least another 150 with the same complaint. And if we address it publicly, if we
Mm-hmm.
just listen to it publicly, people feel better about us.
Right. Exactly. And that kind of comes back to the point is, and Twitter is one of those platforms where you have to develop the ability to listen.
Yes.
Right? I mean, people, and I should have asked you that question, but how do you use Twitter effectively? And in your case, you post a lot of things, but you also listen because you want to see what's happening in your area. And in my case, if I want to know what's happening in my field, I'll go into the search box and I'll type a bunch of things and I'll join the conversation. And it's huge what's happening. I mean, most of the media exposure we get is because of Twitter. I'll respond to a reporter, I'll give him value for months, and then next thing you know, they call me and say, Jacob, come on to the studio. We need you now.
Like I said,
Right?
you should be doing this call, and I should be asking you the question. I do that. That's such a great thing. I tell people that all the time. Follow
Right.
reporters, retweet what they're writing.
Right.
They're going to want to know who this person is. And what are they going to do? They're going to come look at your bio. They're
Right.
going to go look at your profile. Give them stuff to see. Give them
Right.
stuff to page. Give them the URLs to your blog. Let them investigate you. And then, like you said, when they have questions, answer them. Then who are you going to become? A go-to person for them.
Right.
Look, remember something. Everybody thinks that reporters are sought after. Reporters are doing the seeking. They
Right.
need good content. They need people and things to write about. If you help them with that, you're going to become valuable to them. You know, like I said, you need to write a book, Jacob.
And you know, Ted, it's funny because I wrote a blog article on Monday about how to get media attention. I was just talking
Right.
about it on Sunday when they reached out to me. And then yesterday, the NBC reporter came to my office and they were asking me about a particular issue that's happening right now with the border.
Right.
And she had no clue about how the legal system works. She said, explain to me what happens from the moment the person gets arrested to the moment they get into the custody of immigration.
Right.
She had no clue. And I knew that she had a deadline. So what I've done is I drew on a piece of paper, like a child. I gave her a scheme. Here's how it works. She took that paper, and I swear to God, on the show at 4 p.m. in the news, she read the process just like I described to her. And I saw how she was smiling on the news
Right.
because I gave her value. And
100%.
you know what I mean? So I think that it's coming back to what you said. You know, you listen, you see where the need is, and you provide that value. And just be
Right.
nice. It's kind of like where, you know, what you do in a way, but of course you amplify it to all the industry.
No, and it just goes so far. Jacob, I hate to cut this off, but I've got another call that I've got to get on.
Yeah,
I
we are
apologize.
basically we're gonna wrap it up, and I'll edit it in the show.
Oh, okay.
So, Ted, as we come to the end of our show, if there's one thing that you want to share with our audience to take back with them from this conversation, what would it be?
Relationships are like muscle tissue. The more you engage them, the stronger and more valuable they become. It's really comes down to being that simple. Everything is about relationships. If you nurture them, if you give value, if you do for others without expectation of anything directly back in return, you will get it back tenfold. That's the way I feel. It's always worked for me, whether it's been for good times or bad times, and I'm a big believer in it. And I'm gonna be evangelizing that as long as hard as I can. And again, the other thing is, let's take back that word friend and give it value again.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ted. And if somebody wants to find you online, just give us one place where you're at.
I'll give you more than that. I mean, it's tedrubin.com. It's at tedrubin on Twitter. I've got about 5 or 6 other Twitter handles you can find, and I'll make it even easier for them. My email address is tedrubin@gmail.com, and my phone number is 516-270-4666. 5511. I look forward to hearing from anybody.
Perfect. And we'll put all the links, not your phone number, we'll put the links in our blog notes.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
so much, Ted. And this is Jacob Sapochnick with the Enchanting Lawyer Podcast. Thank you for listening to the show. If you any questions, just email me and leave your comments in our podcast. Thank you.